Good morning and welcome. It's good to see your faces on this holiday weekend. Thank you for being here. We are glad you're here, congregant or visitor. I'm Reverend Kathy Harrington, and I serve this congregation as the interim minister. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, wherever you are on this journey, however you identify, you are welcome in our faith community. If you are visiting in the sanctuary, welcome. And if you're visiting online, welcome. We are glad you're here. If you want to learn more about the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville, click on the link in the chat box. And also, we invite you to introduce yourself through the chat and tell us who you are and where you're watching from. So now we are going to prepare for worship with today's centering music. Our special guest musician this morning is harper Sue Richards. Thank you, Sue. Beautiful. Thank you, Sue. So I light our chalice this morning with these words from Reverend Karen LeBlanc. This isn't just a place of worship. This isn't just a fellowship of like minds. This isn't just a Sunday morning filled with spirit and topped off with coffee. This is our church. This is our congregation. This is where we are building beloved community, where we are opening ourselves to each other, where we learn to trust and love and rise and fall together. This is where we feel safe. This is where we know we are welcomed, and this is where we belong. And for this gift, and for so many others, we light our chalice. I chose opening words from Reverend Gretchen Haley. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we are here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. And in a culture that teaches us to get for what we give and to ask what's in it for me, we come to practice generosity and to remember we are all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing, to give thanks, to laugh together, and to be keepers of beauty, and to offer a place of belonging for all who come, in gladness and in pain, and to resist the push to the next moment and the next. So we come here to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater for this hour and in this space. Let us be the change we wish to see. Come, let us worship together. So now please rise in body or spirit, if you are willing, and let us sing together hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. Beautiful. Now it's time for our wisdom story. And this morning, I chose a story that I dearly love, and it's called Brother Juniper by Diane Gibfried. When we get the slides, there he is, Brother Juniper. Brother Juniper was a holy friar. He lived in the hills of Assisi with Father Francis, and 7 other brothers. There was Brother Giles, Brother Pietro, Brother Leo, Brother Elias, Brother Sylvester, and Brother Bernard, and Brother Maceo. They worked together, they prayed together, and sometimes they begged for food together because sometimes they had no food. And Brother Juniper was the most generous of the brothers. Father Francis loved him because he was simple and kind and less complicated than the other brothers. The other brothers knew he was good, but some of them thought he was silly. And this was because there were times when Brother Juniper was often naked. If somebody asked him for his robe, Brother Juniper would gladly give it, even if it was a cold day, even if it was snowing. So one day, Father Francis asked his Brother Juniper, he said, "We are going out to preach. Will you stay home and watch the chapel for us?" "Yes," said Brother Juniper. The other brothers were really worried about this. They didn't want to leave him alone in the chapel because they knew how generous he could be. But they did as Father Francis told them, and they headed down the mountain as Brother Juniper waved goodbye. So Brother Juniper prayed for a while, and then he did some cleaning. He polished the gold candlesticks and dusted the golden chalice. He washed the embroidered altar cloth and mended the brocade vestments. He scrubbed the door and the stained glass windows until the whole chapel was shiny and bright. And then he sat down to rest for a moment when there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Brother Juniper opened the door, and an old, poor man stood outside and, "Hello," said Brother Juniper. "Can you help me?" said the old man. "I am so old that I am losing my sight. I cannot see well enough to work at my job repairing shoes, and soon I will go hungry." Brother Juniper picked up the golden candlesticks. "Take these. If you sell them, you can use the money to buy some new spectacles." "Thank you," said the old man, and he went on his way. Brother Juniper was so glad that he could help, and he was singing about it when suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Brother Juniper opened the door. A woman and her 8 children stood outside. "My husband is sick. I cannot feed my children on my own poor wages." So Brother Juniper handed her the golden chalice. "If you sell this, you can eat for a while, so your husband can rest and get better." "Oh, thank you," said the woman, and she went on her way. Brother Juniper was so glad that he had cleaned everything that morning. Word must have spread fast. Because all day long, Brother Juniper was busy giving things away. He gave vestments to a raggedy young artist. He gave the altar cloth to a baker to cover his basket of bread. He even gave the door to a family whose house had been wrecked in a storm. By evening, there were no walls, no windows, no door, and nothing except Brother Juniper and his broom, until a cleaning woman came and said, "I have no broom. I cannot sweep." So Brother Juniper gave her his broom, and she was shivering. So what did he do? He gave her his robe. And when the brothers came home, they found Brother Juniper standing naked in an empty hole. "Where is the church?" Brother Maceo cried. "You have torn it down," cried Brother Sylvester. "You have ruined our church," shouted Brother Bernard. "Where will we worship?" said Brother Pietro. Oh, Brother Juniper was so sad. He hid himself. And he didn't come out until Sunday because on Sunday it was his job to ring the bell. But he had given the bell to a teacher to start a school. So instead, Brother Juniper stood up on the rock and shouted, "Ding, ding, ding." And all the brothers came with long faces. They were standing in the hole together when over the hill came an old man with new spectacles, and after him a woman with 8 smiling children, and then after her came a baker with a basket of warm, fresh bread and a raggedy artist dressed in a nice new clothes. And then there was a teacher with a group of school children and their parents and their grandparents. A huge crowd had gathered around Brother Juniper, and everyone smiled, and one child said, "We just came to say thank you." The other brothers looked at the crowd, and they were amazed. And when Father Francis arrived, he smiled a great big smile at Brother Juniper. "Look, brothers, look at the fine church that Brother Juniper built. I wish I had a forest of these junipers." And that is the end. So I wonder, what is your favorite part of this story? I think I loved it when Brother Juniper gets his robe away. Such generosity. Wow. And so today, children 8 and under are welcome in our child care in the RE Commons downstairs. Jennifer will lead you down now, anyone who would like to join her. And the older children and youth are invited to grab an activity pack in the foyer and join families for our worship service. Next week is the Religious Exploration launch, when our Sunday classes will resume. And families should begin together in the sanctuary. Following the wisdom story, children, youth, and RE volunteers will be sung out to their classrooms. Please see the e-news or our website for more information and how to register for classes. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your classes. Bye. Thank you. See you later. In the center of our service and in the center of our lives, let us pause to honor the silences of the world. Let us open our hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. As we enter our moment of silence together, let us remember the sometimes forgotten heroes, the healthcare workers, the essential workers, and all of the workers who labored lovingly and generously for us and who continue to do as we try to recover from a pandemic. Let us share a moment of silence. And now is the time for acknowledging our joys and sorrows with a candle lighting ritual. If you're here in the sanctuary, you're invited to come forward and light a candle of memory or hope. If you're online, please write in the chat box any joy or sorrow that you would like to share. If you have shared a joy, know that this community rejoices with you. And if you have shared a sorrow, know that you are held in love and care by this community. We don't have orders of service this morning, or we're trying to actually save trees. So the sermon title is Gather the Spirit. What a surprise. So I want to start with a story from the Islamic tradition. A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in a stream. The next day she met another traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share food. The hungry traveler saw the precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him, and so she did, without hesitation. The traveler left, rejoicing his good fortune. He knew the stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. A few days later, he came back to return the stone to the wise woman. "I've been thinking," he said. "I know how valuable this stone is, but I give it back in the hope that you can give me something even more precious. I would like for you to give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me the stone." So we sang the hymn, Gather the Spirit, written by our own Jim Scott. But what did he mean by spirit? In the book I read a few years ago called Post-Traumatic Church Syndrome by Reba Riley, spirit can look like people with their arms raised to the heavens, tears in their eyes, falling on the ground, speaking in tongues or rocking back and forth, dancing in the aisles. We do see some dancing here, but we don't see that other much here. So what does he mean by spirit? What does spirit look like in a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Jim Scott sees it as nurturing one another. He sees it as social justice work that we do together and worshiping the mystery of life and all its aspects of joy, hope, challenges, sorrow, grief and pain, and love. He mentions strength, but perhaps he means that vulnerability that's more powerful than strength. Perhaps that's what he means, a place where it's okay for us to be our imperfect selves, a place where we are safe, to learn what it means to be human. Maybe he's referring to the strength of working together in community to help others, to help one another. We do that pretty well. Loving stewardship of this congregation so that this faith community can exist now and later on, 50, 100 years from now, so that there will be a safe religious home for everyone in Asheville that offers support, compassion, love, sanctuary, and nurture to our children, and comprehensive religious education to our children and to their children and their children's children. I think Unitarian Universalist congregations are at their best when they create beloved communities of people of faith who gather to celebrate. We gather the spirit and we harvest the power, as Jim Scott says. But what is the power that we harvest? The power might be last week the small group ministry facilitator training and the religious exploration teacher training and getting the OWL program up and running. And what about the power in last week's water ceremony? There's a kind of magic happens when people can feel safe enough to share experiences from the depth of their being, speaking aloud things that cannot be shared in ordinary spaces. Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes was asked why he attended worship services, to which he said, "I have a plant called reverence that needs watering each week." This metaphor is particularly poignant for me because I have a reputation for neglecting my plants. When I finally get around to watering them, it's more like resuscitation than nurturing. And this is what happens when we neglect our spirits. We are exhausted, we are burned out, we are despairing, and we have to be resuscitated. As we all know, plants do so much better when you don't kind of let them half die and then bring them back. And so, wouldn't it be better to be attentive to our spirits by nurturing, watering them regularly? Gosh, it's been maybe 18 years ago, 19 years ago. I was really fortunate to, maybe it was 16 years ago. The memory. I attended 2 love, loss, and forgiveness workshops at a small Buddhist monastery in the Beara Peninsula in Ireland that had a view over the Atlantic that was just beyond words. My grief counselor had recommended that I attend the workshop. I had lost my daughter 3 months after I started my first settled church assignment. I was struggling. The workshops were led by the late Dr. Michael Murphy, who was one of the earliest hospice physicians. He was from Albany, New York, but also his background was in Ireland. He described the workshops as inspirational, experiential, and he encouraged people to learn how to practice the art of loving well as unfolding the trials and possibilities of grief, that journey toward wholeness and forgiveness. Michael said that in the workshop he created, it brings together the notion, he loved to use the notion of the Trinity. His vision of the Trinity was the mortal, the soul, and the spirit. His idea was understanding love, loss, and forgiveness provides us with basic necessities, resources, requirements for living a loving life. He was writing a book called The Secrets of Love, Loss, and Forgiveness as a hopeful response to the terrors and the uncertainties of our age. And that love and forgiveness, he believed, will quiet our fears, and provide real meaning to our lives. He said, for love is the only survival, the only meaning. So each year, attendees, and they were from all over the world, it was really a wonderful gathering of people, we were each asked to bring a possession that had a lot of meaning to us, that was important to us, that we would be willing to give away. And it couldn't be something that you don't care about, that would be easy to give away. It had to be hard. Not so much valuable in money as meaningful. And then we were asked to share the story behind the gift and what it meant to us, to the person who received it. And it wasn't easy deciding what possession I wanted to give away. The first year, I took an ocarina that had been made by a homeless artist in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. This man had been given a chance to discover his talents because of the generosity of a nonprofit organization that gave at-risk individuals a safe place to use their talents and mine their souls for their God-given gifts. I was so inspired by this place called Hospitality House and their ministry, and I was so proud to have this piece of art made by this artist. He had risen from drug addiction, homelessness, and had become an employee of Hospitality House. It symbolized hope and resurrection for me. Sadly, the woman who received my gift that year appeared kind of disappointed. It made me feel bad. So the second year I decided I would try to choose something that might make people more happy. So when the time came to close our week together, we gathered for our ritual and with our beautifully wrapped gifts and invited to play a game that involved music and moving around the room with our gift, and then when the music stopped, you'd hand the gift to the person standing in front of you. And then the music would start again, so it got passed around a lot. And finally it stops and the person in front of you gets the gift. And we take turns opening the gifts and sharing our stories. And it's really a wonderful experience. So the second year, the gift I chose was a necklace made by an artist, an Alaskan artist who gathers fossilized walrus tusk from the beaches in Alaska. It was a pendant of two polar bears with their noses touching. I didn't really have much of a story to share, except that it had been given to me as a birthday present. And it was a fond memory of my time in Alaska. It was Dr. Michael Murphy, who got my gift. And as I was just sharing about this necklace with the two polar bears, I suddenly remembered memories that had been buried deeply under the layers of my pain and my grief. My daughter Leslie, who was at the University of Georgia, had come to work in the summer at my bakery, the miller's daughter. So one afternoon, we were driving up to Anchorage to go to the mall to go shopping, and Leslie was driving because we were riding in a truck that was the manual transmission, which I had never really mastered. And we just came up to Summit Pass, right by Summit Lake Lodge, a bit north of Moose Pass, when an enormous grizzly bear came out of the woods, like out of nowhere. And he stood right in front of our truck. He was walking across. I mean, it was like, we felt like we could touch him. And it took him a really long time. He was not in a hurry. And he lumbered across the road. Leslie and I had been arguing, probably about money. You know, she was an expensive child. She was in a sorority. I mean, it was like, oh, okay. So we were going shopping, so I was trying to, we're trying to tell her she needed to stay within her allowance. She knew how to work me, though. So it's true, a male grizzly bear can weigh as much as 1,300 pounds, and standing on its hind legs, it can be 6.5 to 10 feet tall. The claws vary, but a journal from the Lewis and Clark expedition says that grizzlies' claws can be 6 and 7 inches long. All of those things about that bear still remain vivid in my memory. So as Leslie stopped the truck, and she put her arm out like this, you know, to stop me from hitting the windshield, which I had done how many times? A million times when she was a passenger as a little child. She was so surprised. She said, "Mommy." She called me Mommy. We just sat there and watched this bear in stunned silence and awe, absolute awe. It was breathtaking. And we shared that moment as if we were holding our breath because we were afraid if we moved, he might notice that we were there and decide we were lunch. But we stopped fighting. We drove to Anchorage in this sort of sense of wonder and joy at the rare gift that we knew we had been given. The second bear story that came to me as I was giving away my bear necklace was the summer that Leslie, the second summer she came, Leslie was she was a Southern belle, sort of. She had a Southern accent, and she was a ballet dancer. She was really poised and beautiful, and the guys that would come in the bakery would always offering her presents, like a helicopter ride over the Harding Ice Field and different things like that. Tours, we got all these free things. So this one client came in, and he was a bush pilot, and he offered the free airplane tour of the ice field in the Kenai Peninsula, which was our backyard in Seward, Alaska. And the sources report that the Harding Ice Field spawned over 40 glaciers and covered over 300 square miles in its entirety. But if you were to count the glaciers that it created, that it spawned, it measured over 1,100 square miles. I shudder to think what climate change has done to the Harding Ice Field today. But Leslie chose me. She chose me to share to share her good fortune, and the flight was a 90-minute tour over the Harding. It was gorgeous. It was amazing. We saw Dall sheep and mountain goats and more bears. Bald eagles, moose, wolverines. It was just endless what we saw. The beauty of the mountains and the glaciers from the air gave me a deep respect for the context in which we lived. Seward was surrounded by vast wilderness. Avalanches happened often that blocked the way along the Seward Highway to Anchorage, so we always stocked up when we went to Anchorage. And you always knew if somebody was stopped on the side of the road in Alaska, you stopped. You had to help them. It was life and death, always. You stopped. So this little bush plane was really rickety. I mean, it was literally going like this. I was a little nervous, but Leslie was completely unfazed. And at one point in our flight, we noticed there was a lone bear walking towards nowhere. The pilot said he had never seen anything like it. It looked like from his tracks that he had walked very far away. His journey was long. It would seem to me that the bear was committing suicide. He was going towards where there was no food. And I felt so sad for the bear. I had been a vegetarian for a lot of years by this time. And I felt sad, but I thought, well, if this rickety old plane decides to go down now, at least the bear will have something to eat. And I told Leslie about that later, and she laughed, and she said, "Mom, if the plane had crashed near that bear, I would have said, 'Great, now we have something to eat.'" So those amazing memories that came up from my generosity, my giving, it was like hearing them for the first time. You know, it was like, oh my God, it was so real. It helped me reframe them with new meaning and wrap them, you know, in a sacred linen cloth and stored in that place in my heart where Leslie resides. So I share the stories because of the miracle, the power of giving. And we can't know, really, until we give things away, what that will get. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. I shared this story with the congregation I had been serving, who had been recently attacked. We were the victims of some vicious and ugly attacks by fundamentalist Christians in our small town. I hadn't wanted to get into a futile letter exchange, letters to the editor, I didn't want to attack back. I knew that we could use our sarcasm and intellectual prowess, and feel really good about ourselves, but I did believe that we would get what we give. So I told the congregation, we will get what we give, and I sure do want that we stand proud and firm in our Unitarian Universalist faith, even though they think we're heretics. We stand proud and firm, and we visibly live our values in this community. We are being watched. We have their attention. This is an opportunity to show them who Unitarian Universalists are. So as we gather the spirit of hope and love in this community and in our lives, we want everyone to know. We want to live our lives visibly in the community. We want our faith to be known as inclusive, not exclusive. Unitarians were born out of the Puritan tradition, and the most significant influence on our theology was the rejection of Calvinism and the doctrine of the Trinity. The hateful letters were a reaction to that, to our theology. And because I had been invited as the heretic to preach on the holiest day of the Christian calendar, Good Friday, in the Traore service. It was a small conservative town. Christians in that town, the preachers, were so outraged because we don't believe in the doctrine of the Trinity. And the Unitarians were named in a controversy early in the 1800s by their adversaries who said something similar, "You are nothing but a Unitarian." And the name stuck. It's good, yeah. So we're the no-hellers as Universalists who preached a doctrine of universal salvation in North America, believing that no God could condemn his children to hell. And we have been called the no-hellers. We have responded to an angry God, Elizabeth Strong wrote, with a loving God. We have asserted God is one. We have affirmed Jesus as a teacher and a prophet. We have affirmed the worthiness of humankind, of truths unknown and to be known, and that all religions have some truth, but no religion has all the truth. We have moved with an evolving culture, increased knowledge with reason, faith, hope, and tolerance, love, and freedom. So today I would say, I think we move beyond tolerance towards understanding. Unitarian theologian Tandeka says that we are the promised land. Every time we create a graceful moment of life with self, others, and the world, the kingdom of God, the realm of God is here and now. I love that. I love that. You are the promised land when you support Beloved and other organizations that work to create that realm of God here and now. And you are the promised land when you work to dismantle white supremacy and systemic racism and oppression. You were the promised land and still are when you offered sanctuary to someone who needed it desperately. When you put on your Side with Love shirts and you show up to fight for reproductive rights, voting rights, the right to marry for all people, economic justice, climate justice, and so much more. And you are the promised land when you volunteered to teach religious exploration classes or lead a small group, join the landscape committee, join any committee, serve on the board of trustees, the finance committee, when you support this congregation with your presence and your time and your generosity and your talent. Gather the spirit, harvest the power, our separate flames will kindle one flame, the chorus of life. You are the yeast that leavens the dough. Each of you has a role in the life of this church, and each of you kindles that flame of justice, forgiveness, equity, compassion, hope, and love. May we live our values so completely that people will come to us and say, I want to know more about your faith. I want to know more about the transformative power of love. And it's the wise woman's story. I want you to give me what you have within you that enables you to give what is so precious to you. May it be so. Please rise in body or spirit and let us sing The Fire of Commitment, hymn number 1028 in the Teal hymnal. So now it's time in our service when we invite our visitors to stand if they're willing and introduce themselves. If you're willing. We'd love to meet you.
Hi, I'm Jordan. Thanks for having me here. It's a beautiful service.
Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Hi, my name's Kate. We're new to Asheville, but we're not new to UUism. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
I'm TK. Yep. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome.
I'm Ashley. Hi, y'all.
Hi, Ashley. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Brian, and this is my family. This is my wife, Katie, and my 2 children.
I'm Katie. This is my family, and this is my husband, Brian.
Yay! Welcome. We're really glad you're here. Really glad you're here. Thank you for having the courage to introduce yourself. Okay, so let's see. Les is going to make an announcement about upcoming music. What
I just want to say, because we're UUers, we can do a huge variety of music in our services, which of course includes secular music. Upcoming this month, on September 11th, we have the Sandburgers providing music. The Sandburgers is our in-house band. On September 18th, we have our choir returning, and they'll be singing twice a month. And then we're very excited that September 25th, we have Emma's Revolution. If you don't know who they are, you better find out. And also, we're very grateful to have Sue Richards today.
So we show our announcements at the beginning of the service, and if you missed them, you can find them in the e-news. If you didn't get the e-news, then you can find them on our website. And so now I'm really proud to welcome Pancho Bermejo, who is part of the beloved organization that we spoke of. Thank you, Pancho.
They promised me Denise is going to be pictures, so I hope Denise pictures. My name is Poncho Bermejo. I'm one of the co-directors of Bill of Asheville. And something that stayed with me is how you start with a welcome, Denise, about creating spaces of welcome. And I was thinking that a lot of you know how to create spaces of welcome. Usually, the way that I identify these spaces is with signals. A lot of times I can go to different houses or different places, and if I smell spicy food, I feel welcome there because I know them, they know what type of food I like. So I think then one of the biggest symbols of welcome that we have in our organization is the beloved street pantries. And a lot of you are taking care of one of them, one that I call the octopus street pantry, because sometimes I forget what the street is in. And this creates a symbol of welcome because I always think that people in the street, when they are pushing out and they are bound from being in public parks, they find a street pantry right in the corner with food inside. They start thinking, oh, people care about me. And people see me. I'm welcome here in a space that not a lot of people are welcome. And so thank you for filling the pantry and for always keep the pantry full of hope in Charlotte Street. And I was thinking too, then it's a lot of systems that make you feel no welcome. Oh, here's the pictures there. So in 2019, or was 2020, February, I received a call from for the wife of my brother. My brother was detained by ICE he had a car accident, so he don't have a license, so he was detained by ICE. So we do a lot of different things. We call a lawyer, and the lawyer said that we have to raise $50,000 to even think to take him out from ICE detention. He's a very good person. He don't have a bad record. So we raised the money from the community. We raised $50,000, so we was able to take him out. And thinking about the spaces of welcome, this is a lot of systems that make us feel unwelcome. And so when we back in the end of February was when we have a meeting with the city, and the city tell us then the city is going to close because of the COVID. So they ask us how we going to roll, how we going to be helping the community when everything is going to be closed and it's not going to be work and it's not going to be spaces to be no more. So we already know what we're going to do. The best thing that we can do is improvise and adapt to whatever circumstance that is going to be needed in our community. So around this time in April, let me check my distance. Yeah, I'm good. So around this time in April, we started distributing food in the communities. We saw that one of the biggest problems that was affecting our community is that the resource was not going to every community. In this meeting that we have with the city, we say to them that it's very important for us to share the debriefs about what is going on in our city in different languages, because in this county we have more than one language, not only English. We have people from Ukraine, Moldovan, and a lot of people from Latin American places. So we push them enough to have a debrief in Spanish too. So I create a page that is called Asheville en Español. That is the place that I can share information about what was going on at the time with the COVID. And like I was saying, we start mobilizing food, and from 2020 to 2021, we share 5 million pounds of food directly to the communities that was impacted by the COVID. We share 500,000 diapers. We do vaccination in the same places that we were sharing food. We do vaccination in the same communities. We do vaccination in restaurants. We do vaccination under bridges, besides the bus station. And for me, the more powerful thing, when you was talking about hope, made me remember one of the more powerful stories that I remember from this time when everything was closed was kids that was not going to the school, everything was virtual, so the people that helped us to move the food was the kids. So I remember Bella is the name of her. She at the time she was 8 years old, and we used to came and she used to help us to make boxes. And one day she went to a yard sale and she saw a small car for groceries, and she asked the mama, Monica, that is the name of her, if she can buy the grocery cart for her. And Monica said yes. And later Monica asked what is the plan of her, how she plans to use this car. And she said, oh, you know, I would like to have boxes of food that we make and deliver it to the door of my neighbors. She's 8 years old at the time. So I think that in the middle of the craziness that we was seeing, like, we saw a lot of hope in the community, and we saw a lot of hope in the ground. And this helped us even bigger to have something that I create. I think that is like a table. I believe that every work that we do, we create a stronger table to do whatever is needed to support our community. So we have a group now that is probably around 800 people in the Latinx community and help us to distribute food, to distribute different stuff and create cultural events. So this month, in the 15th of September, start the Hispanic Heritage Month. Start from the 15th of September until the 15th of October. So we're going to be celebrating in different ways. The 13th of this month, we're going to receive the proclamation from the city saying that we are, like you were saying, that a lot of people that look like myself are essential workers, and then the reason that we are able to survive, a lot of us then survive the pandemic was because these essential workers then never stopped working. So we're going to receive the proclamation from the city, and the 16th, we're going to have an event. We just buy a new food truck. So from this time, then we was delivering food. I remember then people in the community start saying, you know, one of the biggest need too is diapers. So women in the community start saying, you know, I know how to cook pupusas. I know how to cook pollo en tajada, that is from Honduras, and pupusas from El Salvador. So we came together and we decided we're going to make fundraisers to collect money to share diapers with the community. So from there was create Comida de Esperanza. And everybody was dreaming, oh, you know, we can do tamales. And at one point we create tamales por pañales, then is tamales for diapers. So we exchange tamales for diapers. So people bring boxes of diapers and we give tamales to them. And from there was born the idea of what happened if we was creating a kitchen that was mobile, then we can share our culture and we can teach our kids about our culinary culture. So we buy, probably 3 months ago, we buy a food truck. And this dream is coming true. So the 16th of September is going to be the first day that we use this truck. We're going to be teaching kids, Latinx kids in our community, how to make tortillas. So I think that all your donations today is going to go directly to this project. So one of the ideas that we have is mobilizing this school with wheels to the communities, and at the same time creating ways for us to share fresh food directly with people in the streets. Something for us then is very important is that people that feel unwelcome know how it feels in every corner. I can tell you that I was living in the streets. I live in the streets for more than 3 years. And being in the streets and being a Latinx person, I can see how this match together for the unwelcome places that is around. Like it's systems that make you feel unwelcome because you are in the street or you are somebody that don't have a house, and systems that make you feel unwelcome because you don't look like the way that is the normal thing to look. So we are trying to collapse both wars, and we hope then you can support us in with this project. So all your donation is going to the food truck today, and the Latinx warden we are doing, and the equity warden we are doing. 12 o'clock. I made it.
Oh, thank you so much, Pancho. I learned so much more about Beloved that I didn't know before, and I'm just so grateful that this congregation supports you, and you can support them by donating. Thank you so much. I'm excited about all of your activities. So now it's time for the offering, and now where you can support Beloved. We build, these words are by Reverend Peter Rabel. We build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees that we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. This is how it should be. We are ever bound in community. Today's offering will now be collected and gratefully received. Before I do our closing words, I want to invite you to join me on Wednesday evening for a candlelight peace vespers. We begin at 6 p.m. with a simple meal of bread and soup, and then we'll come into the sanctuary. You're invited to bring a poem or a prayer, or just yourselves, as we center ourselves to hope and pray for peace. Closing words are by John C. Morgan. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we have loved. Please rise in body or spirit, and we'll sing our closing song, which will be followed by the postlude and a time of fellowship in Sandburg Hall. If you need to leave before the postlude concludes, please do so quietly so others can enjoy the music. Now, longtime son.